On the bench today we got a box, and as you can see from the packing tape, it's from President. So they have a few new radios out now, one of which, it's in here, the President, I think this is the President Bill, is released and available. And then within like the next month or two, one of them I think within the next month, and then the other one, I think it's the Walker, is currently awaiting FCC approval, and we're in the middle of a government shutdown. So, FCC's affected by that. So, Lord knows when that thing will actually get approval. But, yeah, I was kind of curious to get this one. This is, as you can tell by the box, I mean, good Lord, the box, I can almost cover it with my hand. It is a tiny little radio. Looks like the mic's not much bigger than the radio itself. And apparently has a tilt display. Not that you can tilt it, but that's actually the button. It rocks back and forth as a, I guess, the channel up-down button, which we're going to find out here. And even as small as it is, it's got a USB charging port on the front. So, let's see here. They don't have any specs written on the box. Crack it open here and see what we got. Another sticker to add to the pile. That looks like my foam. If you've ever had me work on a radio, that's the type of foam in different thicknesses that I use. Wow, that is a tiny radio. Holy, yeah. Man, now that, I think they're marketing this radio towards the off-road community. Honestly, folks, you couldn't ask for a much better size radio to stick in, shoot, not just off-road vehicles, but shoot, Volkswagen Beetles, or you name a small vehicle. Good Lord, that is... Can't see the radio. Just the palm of my hand almost. That is... Wow. And yep, it's got a clicky... So it doesn't have a channel selector switch on here anywhere. That's actually, I guess, the up-down buttons. So, how do we... little sliding bracket. That's new. So, no screws needed, no nuts to lose over the decades. And it just snaps in. That's kind of interesting. That's a new approach. Kind of like that. I'm assuming it's universal. Let's try flipping it around the other direction, because I know somebody's going to ask me, Mike, does the bracket fit on in both directions? Before I tell you I don't know, I guess I got to stick it in from this way. So yes, if you wanted to do an overhead mount, it'll work that direction too. So the mount goes on in this direction or in this direction, either way. So, cute little speaker. Yeah, it's plastic. Let's see here. Really? Screw hole under the plastic. Did we? Huh, we're using Torx bits now. Okay. Let's see what we got inside this little guy. Almost got to wonder if this is a chip on, or radio on chip, which is becoming more popular with amateur radios. A lot of the walkie-talkies they're using, it's what they're nuts. Stickers coming apart. Got to get this off because they're the... Yes, I know. I hate stickers. I know what direction the power cord hooks up. I don't need a gigantic sticker to remind me. I'll clean that crap off later. But, yeah, a lot of radios are starting, in the amateur radios, smaller ones, they're starting to use what's commonly referred to as radio on chip, because that's basically what it is. The radio is on a single chip. Pretty much most of the receiver circuitry and the transmit circuitry. None of the amplification, but pretty much everything else the radio does is. And this does not look to be the case in this one. We don't have much going to the front. Controls, that's on a separate little daughter board there. So basically it's just going to be the display interface for the rocker switch and connection down for the USB charging port, which is can supply 2.1 amps. And what do we have for a final? FQP 13N10. Kind of almost should have known that. That's what most radio manufacturers are using now. And I'll keep saying this in video after video until this rumor is gone. There's some nitwit out there telling people that if you have FQP 13N10s, and I think even the IRF 520s, that, oh, your radio is going to burst into flames and whatnot. He's trying to sell you parts, people. He's trying to get you to send him your radio to not only sell you parts, but to charge you to put the parts in. He's selling those Palomar, just rebranded transistors, and that's all it is. It's just a marketing scheme. And I give it a little while before that goes a little bit too far, and a manufacturer is going to sue them for him for liability or for defamation of character. Because that's pretty much what everybody uses now is the FQP 13N10s, and they're a good FET or MOSFET. They're good and reliable. Now, one thing to note: small radio, and actually a lot of the, well, not a lot, but a couple of the President radios are starting to go like this. For me personally, doesn't bother me one bit. Screwdriver proof. There's no adjustments. There are no VRs in this radio. It's all done by the factory in programming. So, now this, of course, is only an AM radio, so it's not like you have to worry like it has sideband, but I do see something. What is that? I need to come out a little bit more. There's a header socket and a mysterious white wire. We'll have to investigate that after we try this out. Anything else that's kind of eyebrow raising? No. But that looks like a mod. Definitely looks like a mod. It's got a jumper, header socket with a push-on jumper right there, and there's a wire that it just looks like it's begging for a pair of wire cutters. So we'll have to check that out. Yeah, otherwise, nice looking radio. Of course, it's surface mount, so their surface mount technology is very reliable. Looks like the only through-hole parts on here. Even I see they're starting to use mainly surface mount electrolytic capacitors. Again, nothing wrong with that. But yeah, you have a few leaded components in here. There's 3 leaded electrolytics. There's a choke there, coil back here in the RF section. I was going to say there's probably a couple under the shield, which there are. Your driver and final transistors and whatnot. But through-hole components are more reliable because you usually don't end up with bad solder joint connections on surface mount parts compared to stuff like this. The leads, just the component trying to move over time, can weaken the solder joints, where surface mount parts, the leads are soldered down flat against the board, and it just end up being more reliable. So, yeah, that's just, man, that's impressive. Tiny little, which, honestly, I guess if you think about it, it's not so impressive because it's so small. There have been tiny radios around for a long time. Think about some of the, basically it's a radio and a microphone. It has a coiled cord that might go to a little box that has the actual RF connector on it. But basically most of the radio is in the microphone. So, they've been using small technology for a while, but they're finally starting to get true mobile radios, really small in size. So let me put the cover back on. We'll try it out. Check receive and transmit. I'll go over some of the specs in this thing. Looks like it's printed in about 50 languages. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4 languages according to the tabs. We'll just look for the spec sheet in there, take a quick gander at that, see how this thing works, and then I'm going to do a little bit of investigating here with this little double pin header or triple pin header that's got a double jumper on it, and this little mystery wire. So yeah, I kind of get the feeling that's a naughty mod right there. Okay, before even hooking it up to any test equipment, this jumper down here was just killing me. I had to know, what was that? I need to get rid of this cover here. Pop that off really quick. So, it looks like over, because you have to remember, over America, we only have AM and sideband, where many other countries use FM, is actually the norm in most other countries. They even have CB in different frequency ranges as well. It varies from country to country. But it looks like, and is that Mark III? Yep, so that's just like they said. So apparently, if you move this jumper to the center, because right now it's on the center and inside pins, if you move that, pull that jumper off and move it to the center and outside pin, cut that wire, and then add a bridge between those two posts right there, which are actually labeled number 3 on the board. So you put a jumper, or you could just move, well, you'd have to take the board out to do that, but add a jumper wire between those two pins. Apparently it turns it into a 20 watt FM radio. I'm not sure if it's selectable AM. I'll have to check. But yeah, we're going to test it as is first, and then I'll see if this can be turned into an FM radio, because I can't say. There's a few missing parts on this board, but they look like there's a few open pads over here, but I don't know. Those may have even been for programming for a bed of nails when they did testing on the assembly line. Other than that, it doesn't look like there's any missing parts. So, yeah, we'll give her a try. I don't know, I may even extract this board out, because there's something hiding under here. I'm going to assume it's a voltage regulator. You can see there's 3 pins right here. Of course, our power cord comes in right here. It's kind of, just judging by the location of the pins. But yeah, it looks like there's a 3-legged transistor of some sort, something this package size, TO220 under there. I'm going to assume that's probably either a 5 or a 3.3 volt regulator. Be easy enough to tell, just touch it with a voltmeter. But yeah, judging by the location of the input power, I'm going to say there's a regulator hiding on the underside of the board. So yeah, I don't know, maybe the underside of this board is completely populated as well. It may only be one part under there, but there may be other parts on the underside. But let's try it out first, as is, and we'll see how it works out of the box. While I'm waiting for the communications test set to boot up, I just noticed something. There is a mounting bracket. It has 2 of them, so it's actually optional. You can put on the normal hoop bracket, like you would normally see with a radio, with knobs and whatnot, and it has the screw holes in the side for those, or you can use this slide-in bracket. That's kind of nice. So, yeah, I completely missed that. I unboxed it, sat that stuff off to the side, and didn't even see it. So, yeah, you have 2 mounting options. Normal bracket that gives you that gives you the option of being able to tilt the radio a little bit within the limitations of the bracket. But, or you can use this nice little solid mount here. So, that's kind of nice. And yes, this entire piece here is die-cast metal. The heat sinks all incorporated into it, all of that. The only thing that's plastic is the faceplate bezel and the little bottom cover, like most of these radios now. This entire piece on most radios nowadays, any of the ones where you see they look like this, yeah, these are always solid metal. So anyhow, let me finish hooking it up. Okay, so I've got her hooked up to communications test set. I'm feeding a signal into it right now. What am I feeding in? -73, so that's an S9 signal level. We'll just turn the level down. Let's go down to like there's -100 dBm, and actually the spec on this, let me turn that down a little bit, 0.5 microvolts or -113. So there's a -113 dBm. So it is not the most sensitive radio in the world, but by all means don't think it's a slouch, because I have seen a lot worse. And -113 dBm is plenty for normal people just talking on a radio. For starters, you're not going to be talking DX and skip probably with something like this. You wouldn't be buying a radio like this to talk skip with. You'd be buying this to stick in a very small spot in a vehicle for a very specific reason. But yeah, I think the reception's perfectly suitable for what this radio is. Like I say, it's not. There are radios that have better reception. Other President radios actually that have a little bit better reception. But yeah, that seems fine. Transmits actually, man, if they got any closer to 4 watts, usually that's the one thing. A lot of times, output power is a good ways off. It would be like 3.5 or maybe even 3 watts. So if we key the microphone, and we can see, what do we got? 35.6. And I actually had it keyed up for quite a while, and actually the heat sink's rather warm in this thing. I initially had around 35.9, there you can see it was at 35.7 for a second. But yeah, 35.6 seems to be right around where it's hanging at. 36 dBm is 4 watts. 35 is what, 3.2, 35 dBm is 3.2 watts. So it's really close to 4 watts. And if I just turn on an audio source, there's a 1 kilohertz audio tone. That looks nice and clean. And then we can also, I'll go ahead and turn on the oscilloscope over here. We can take a look at that once that boots up. Yep, that looks good. And actually, while the oscilloscope boots up, what we can do is take a look at some of the other features this little guy has. Because it does actually have a surprising amount of features for something so small. For starters, you can run the factory Electrete microphone. So this has a powered Electrete microphone cartridge in it. But if you want, you could run a dynamic microphone cartridge, or if you had a power mic that you wanted to run, let's say, you can do that with this. When you first turn the radio on, let me get rid of this stupid sticker. You first turn this radio on, see it says mic EL. EL stands for Electrete, so it gives you a little 2-second prompt to let you know that it is set to Electrete. You can set this to dynamic microphone, just like some of the other President radios. So depending on what microphone you're using, you can set it to either a powered Electrete microphone or an original conventional style dynamic microphone. This does have the weather channel. So we have 4 buttons along the outside edge. We have an ANL, noise blanker, and high cut. So if you watch the display down here, if I just short press, you can see it says ANL, noise blanker, ANL. Hit it again, it turns both of those off. And if you press and hold, that turns on the high cut, which is a high audio frequency filter. So it cuts out the high audio frequencies, which I usually run my radios with the high cut turned on. This radio does have a Roger beep. So if you short press the bottom left button, you can see the little musical note comes in and out. That's to let you know the Roger beep's on. And if you long press this button, that locks. Let me just try it here. Yeah, can't do anything. That locks all of the key press functions. Emergency channel. Okay, you hit that, goes to channel 9. You hit it again, takes you to channel 19. There are 2 emergency channels, 9 and 19, but you can change those. Brilliant. I wish more manufacturers did that. Because honestly, I don't think anybody monitors channel 9 anymore. Usually the only thing I hear on channel 9 is Mexico anymore these days. So yes, you can set those channels. So you could use the emergency as like a quick feature to get to, let's say, channel 19. But let's say you had 2 favorite channels that you use, something like channel, I don't know, 17 and 21. Well, you could program those in. Actually, what is the procedure for that? Be assigned to any channel, short press the emergency button to select priority, then press the key. Okay, so let's say we'll set that one. And we'll set that one to 7. Okay, so if we're, let's say, on channel 2, if I hit the button once, it takes me to, I just changed to channel 7. or to channel 17. So yeah, you can change the emergency channels to anything you want. So like right now, I have it set to channel 7 and channel 17. So great. This does have the Noaa weather radio and an alert in it. So if you hit that button, of course we don't have an antenna hooked up. We'll just hook up a little stubby antenna here for the weather. See what we can pick up with it.
Relative humidity 47%.
And
190 inches and falling. Local conditions.
trying not to run into anything with that little antenna I just put on. So yeah, I can hit the one in Harrisburg and the one in Hagerstown, Maryland. So because I'm right on the state line. So yep, weather radio seems like it's working fine. But yeah, and as you'll also notice, I have a different color when we first or is this? No, actually, I think that's the same color. I've been playing around with that. Hold if you radio turned off, press and hold the CB weather button. Turn the radio on. It'll flash that and it says color, and you can change it to any color that you happen to like. Actually, let me look through the viewfinder here and see which one the camera likes best. They actually all don't look bad. I know sometimes the camera, it doesn't look the same as what it does in person. Personally, I'm a green person, so yeah, I'll probably stick with that one. Oh, actually what you're supposed to do is, I think just, I'll get back to green. Yeah, just key the mic. So there, now it's set to green. So yeah, you can change your color. So yeah, it's got lots of little features. I'm missing anything? I think I pretty much covered all the features in it. Oh, it also has scan. So you can do it with either, and this microphone does have the channel up-down buttons built into it. So you can use either one. You can either use the little rocker switch here on the front, or if you press and hold the button and wait for a tone, it's now in scan mode. And then to pop out of scan mode, just tap the PTT button and it'll knock it out of scan. Yeah, feature packed, for especially considering how small that thing is. Yeah, Roger beep, A&L high cut, noise blanker, channel. Yeah, and it also, like I say, also has the weather alert. So, if you're a truck driver, you're sleeping in the sleeper of your tractor. If you're using one of these things, you can turn it on in the weather alert. That way, if the Noaa weather station that's near you sends an alert, you'll hear that come across the radio, like, let's say a tornado warning or something. USB charging, microphone plug, PTT, key beep. Yeah, you can that beep beep beep. Anytime you press a button, you can turn that on and off. Change the color, the mic type, already described that. So yeah, and then there's the technical specs on this little guy. 40 channel normal specs over here, and then here's the receive and transmit. And let's see, weight is 0.75 or 0.705 pounds. Yeah, it doesn't get much lighter than that now, does it? That is cute. I may actually have to try this thing out in a mobile for a while. I've got a sideband. Actually, I have a President McKinley in the one car right now. I may take that out because I never talk sideband in a mobile. The only thing I ever do, I just keep the radios on channel 19 pretty much, and that's it. I might stick this in to give it a try because, man, that just doesn't take up any room at all. Actually, the other thing I have in that mobile is one of these. Now, granted, it's not a President. This is a dual band 2 meter 70 centimeter amateur radio, but I have in my car, the one car I have this sitting on top of a President McKinley. I may replace that setup, move this down, and set this little President on top of it. Man, it just takes up so much less space in the vehicle just because it's so small. So yeah, I think that might be worth trying out. So let's take a look at modulation on the oscilloscope over here. Let's see, we want channel 3, turn off 4, that's centered, and we want to trigger on channel 3. Okay, turn on our audio. Too far. Hold on a minute here. Get my trigger level set too. Okay, so I'd say that looks about like maybe 90% modulation. Oh, camera's down a little bit, isn't it? Move that over. Move my trigger point down. So, yep. Now remember, no adjustments in this. And I have not received the service manual for this radio yet, so I'll have to. I completely forgot to ask him when I talked about getting one of these things to do a review video on. And this was supplied by President. I did not buy this radio. I don't know if I mentioned that at the beginning of the video. I usually try to do that, and I completely forgot. So, yeah, I think this is a nice little radio. If you're looking for a super ultra compact radio, this may be the way to go, man. They just don't get any smaller than this. So, now we have these mystery jumpers on the inside. So let me, like I said, I just really quick looked up online and found where they said move the jumper, cut the wire, add a jumper. I just want to see if this thing can be converted very easily over to FM. I'm kind of curious. Like I say, it wouldn't do you any good here in the United States because we don't use FM. What I'm also wondering is, do they possibly have basically one board that they use? Doesn't matter what country the radio goes to, because you can do that kind of stuff nowadays. You can have a board with all the parts on it. So it could be an AM or an FM or an AM and FM radio. The only thing that would be different with the radio would be the programming on the microprocessor. I'm wondering if maybe that's what they did. It may have the jumpers just like the ones overseas where you can do the modification for a 20 watt FM radio, but it might not be possible because remember, this is, as the name implies, FCC certified. So, but that doesn't have anything to do with channels, so the FCC may have even let that slide, being able to do FM. Usually what the FCC flips out about is easy channel modifications. If you can snip or clip a wire and get easily get extra channels, that's usually what the FCC doesn't put up with nowadays. So let me try it, and I'll be back now, and we'll see if, when I come back, if we have an FM radio possibly. Okay, so I thought I'd follow up really quick before done with this video. Wanted to take a look at the bottom side of it, so I've extracted it out of the case. Just 2 screws on the front. It pops off, and you have to undo the ribbon cable, unplug this connector, and then desolder these 2 wires, a positive and negative, and they're what supply voltage to the USB charging port. That's why they're a fairly good size, because that can supply 5 volts at 2.1 amps. As expected, bottom side of the board's populated. It kind of had to be because there's no processor on the top side. So here's the processor right here. Another thing, anytime you work on a radio like this, doesn't need to be specifically this radio, but any radio like this, be sure when you disassemble something, and honestly, it doesn't need to be a radio. It can be a computer or anything electronic nowadays. It's very common to find these inside of electronic devices now. They're commonly referred to as Sill Pads or sponges. These are used to transfer the heat from components to the heatsink. If you lose one of those, or if it falls off and you don't see it, and you put whatever of your device is back together, it may live a very short life if you forget to put those back in. So like here's one stuck to, looks like probably a regulator. Yeah, that's the 8-volt regulator for the radio. So that's a 7808 surface mount design. But yeah, be very careful. And then same thing like for this right here, they've got one laying down on here. And let's see here. That other one would be, where would that be? Right here on this device. Which, if it's got a sill pad on, of course, it's got schmutz all over it from that sill pad. I can't see what. Oh, what is that part number? I can't make it out. I have to clean it off with isopropyl. But yeah, just something to be aware of. Anytime you take anything electronic apart nowadays, just make sure you don't lose the sill pads, and not only just losing them, but make sure that they don't move on you. So when you pull one of these out, because they're kind of like impregnated with an oil, so they're kind of moist. Actually, if you squeeze them, a lot of times you'll see a liquid kind of oozing out of it. So it can be, you know, this side may be stuck, you know, one corner may be stuck to the device and the other corner may be stuck to the heatsink, and when you pull it off, it just kind of falls off and maybe lands over here. So be sure to look at where these things are and make sure that when you go to put it back in, that they're actually lined up with a part, that it didn't lift up, you didn't see it, you know, when you picked the board up, moved over, and it just fell off and fell back down on the heatsink. I actually saw that happen in a radio one time, and it was in a regulator. It was a voltage regulator, and it didn't. Got heatsink crap all over my fingers now. But just something to be aware of. But yep, bottom side, good, nice layout, just like the top side. See, they do have a bunch of RF shielding channels in the bottom side here that match up with the gold plating traces here for RF shielding. Now that this is out, you can actually see down in here, you can see the matching networks and the low pass filter circuit, and I got more of that crap on my fingers. That's why I hate heatsink compound. It's just like anti-seize. I call that jump grease, because it jumps off whatever it's on all over you. And make sure I put some fresh down anyhow. But yeah, getting the board out, not bad. Just a handful of screws, 2 screws for the transistors. Desolder, they just use a header pin that goes up to the antenna connector. And that's one thing that's actually kind of interesting. The antenna connector, didn't even really notice that before, it's not a flange mount. It's not screwed on. It doesn't have a nut on the backside. It's actually threaded into the housing. So yeah, I'm gonna have to make sure I order some of them for parts inventory, because I don't have any of those. So yeah, just next time I order parts from President, I'll be sure to get a few of those, because they can wear out over time. Now, for people that just install a radio and it stays in place their lifetime, yeah, you'll never have a problem. But some people tend to change antennas like they change socks. Almost daily, it seems like. And in cases like that, yeah, you do see occasionally, you'll see, or people take their radio out every time they get out of the vehicle. They may be swapping radio from vehicle to vehicle all the time, and that's what you'll have. The jacks will get worn out, so yeah, I do need to get a couple of those. But now, these mystery jumpers over here. I tried it before I pulled this apart. It didn't do anything. As you can see, the wire's been cut and spliced back together, because I actually did it before I pulled it apart. So yeah, I cut that wire. I had added a jumper from here to here, and then I moved this jumper from the 2 inside terminals, or the center and the inside terminal, and moved it to the center and outside terminal, fired the radio back up, and it was still exactly as it was before. Nothing happened whatsoever. So I get the feeling it may be programmed differently than radios that are being sold in EU countries, but they're using the same board. Everything else is exactly the same. It's just programmed different, probably. If your mileage may vary. Maybe there's some other combination of this. I don't even have the service manual for this one yet. Matter of fact, I need to make sure I ask about getting that. But yeah. So from what I found, like I say, I had seen someone had made a post about doing this, but that, like I say, that was specifically for a President Bill, not a President Bill FCC, which is for in the United States where I'm at here. So I get the feeling probably just programming. But yep. So in any case, there's the bottom side of it. And nice to see they do have some extra shielding around the power supply circuitry here. It's always a good idea, especially since this thing's going to have the USB port here. So yeah, it's always good for noise isolation. So I'll get this little critter put back together. And like I say, I might actually try this little guy out and actually try using it because, man, it's just so small. And like I say, I don't do sideband in mobiles. That's just, I've never been, honestly, I never talk on the blasted radios. I never have any time to. I haven't actually held a conversation on a radio on a CB for months, honestly. I don't have time. I talk on GMRS occasionally, local club, but yeah, I just don't have time to talk on the radio. And about the only thing I do when I get in the car, I always have a CB turned on, but I monitor channel 19 and some of the local groups, but like I said, I rarely get on them, so I only really need an AM radio in a vehicle. Well, that does it right there. It's, this little tiny guy right here will take up a heck of a lot of space than the radio that I'm currently using. So, yeah. Now, like I say, this will fit right on top of the 2-meter 70-centimeter radio I've got that's actually sitting on top of a CB right now. I'll have to swap that around. I'll move the amateur radio to the bottom and set this little critter right on top of it. So, and it doesn't look like there's going to be much of anything else on the front of this. Yeah, there's probably a support chip for the display, but that's going to be about it. Don't know if this one runs a slave. I don't think this one runs a master and slave microprocessor. Doesn't look like it. Just for starters, the ribbon cable's kind of small here. So yeah, I'm thinking everything's done on the main processor on here, because some of these radios do have 2 microprocessors. They'll have a master and a slave, and the slave processor will be up on the front display. But in any case, I just wanted to really quick pull this out, show you the bottom side. And yes, I did try the published modification, but like I say, that was on a website from a European country. And it was not a President Bill FCC. It was just a President Bill. So yeah, it appears that doesn't work in the U.S. So anyhow, there you go. There's the review of the President Bill FCC. One last thing, just putting this back together, putting the screws in. And I had mentioned there are no adjustment points in this, so I want to make sure that I make this really clear. If you buy one of these radios and someone tries to sell you an alignment or a peak and tune on the radio, tell them to go pound sand, because they're trying to steal your money. There is no alignment that a shop's going to be able to do to this. As I said previously, the alignment is done through programming at the factory. So if somebody tells you they're going to peak and tune one of these radios, they're just out to get your money. There is no peak and tune to do to this radio. All of the inductors are fixed inductors. All of the capacitors are fixed. There are no adjustable trimmer capacitors. There's no variable resistors. There's no tunable coils or inductors inside of this thing. So there is nothing that they can peak and tune in one of these radios. So I just want to make that really, really clear to people. Save yourself money. Now, just because somebody's trying to sell you a peak and tune doesn't mean you don't have to buy the radio from them. If they're selling the radio at a good price, have at it. But if they try to sell you that extra service, yeah, just tell them thanks, but no thanks.